pull up a seat to the EduTable
with Nicole Biscotti and Melissa Sidebotham.
Welcome. We're so glad that you've decided to pull up a seat to the EduTable. I'm Melissa Sidebotham, and I'm here with my good friend, Nicole.
Hi, I'm Nicole Biscotti. The EduTable is a place for parents and educators to share ideas and perspectives. This has become a critical conversation given what we're all dealing with at the moment and the impact that it's having on education and on our children. Today we'll be discussing homeschooling strategies since everyone in America is now homeschooling temporarily.
All right, and we've got a fabulous guest panel set up for you today. First up, we've got Kris Felicello. He is a district administrator from New York. Hi, Kris.
Hi, Melissa. How you doing? I'm really glad and excited to be joining this panel tonight and talking about this important topic. Here in New York, things have definitely gotten strange as we prepare to change our paradigm a bit and provide students with instruction in a different format. And it's something new to all of us and something that we really didn't even think about a month ago. And things certainly have changed. So important topic to talk about. I'm excited to talk about it with so many people that are interested in it.
Thank you so much. Taylor Armstrong is our next guest panelist, and he is the Assistant Director of Technology, and he's from Alabama. Welcome, Taylor.
Hey, it's great to be here. Just excited to be able to talk, and I know there's a lot of uncertainty now, but the great part is for people like me that do technology every day, we have plans and we have a lot of ideas, and we're here to help in any way that we can and just make the process better.
Wonderful. And then the last two people on our panel today are parents, with both of them have experience with homeschooling. First up is Lori. She is a mom from California. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Melissa. Nicole, thanks you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I have homeschooled my three sons up until my oldest finished seventh grade, and now they're in the public school system. And so I'm excited to be here. I've mentored quite a few parents who transitioned to homeschooling over the past few years, and now I'm excited to help all of us parents who've suddenly found themselves with homeschooling their kids at home. And so I'm happy to share my experience with everyone.
Well, we're happy to have you share that as well. And then we also have Jen, and she's been homeschooling from North Carolina. Welcome, Jen.
Hi, delighted to be here. My experience with homeschooling, I homeschooled my youngest son for the latter half of fifth grade while waiting for a placement at a private school for special needs children called Hope Creek Academy. I'm currently conducting home learning in collaboration with Hope Creek's teachers and staff in response to the North Carolina Governor Cooper's executive order requiring schools to close for at least 2 weeks in response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
I just really want to thank you all for being here and taking the time. I know that we're all very stretched with our jobs, transitioning as parents, with being concerned about our family members and our safety. And I really just applaud all of your passion for education and your dedication and sharing your experience. Thank you. The first question that we have today is, what is your experience up until now with homeschooling? So if I could direct that first towards Kris, please.
Sure. Yeah. As a district administrator, my current position is the Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services. And one of my responsibilities is to be the liaison between homeschool parents and the school district. And even though once a parent begins to homeschool their child and they're no longer officially tied to the school, it is my responsibility to ensure that there is the proper paperwork is filled out, the individual home instruction plan is filled out. I can point parents to the appropriate resources and the guidelines from New York State, which is the state that I'm in. But beyond that, really hearing Jen and Lori and people that are doing it and have been doing it a long time, I think they're going to be such a big resource for all of us who are in the brick and mortar schools as we kind of transition for an extended period of time into a homeschooling type of environment, an iLearning type of environment. So, I know a little bit about homeschooling, but really am excited to tap into that resource to those parents that have been doing it for a while.
Yes, Kris, I think that one of the beautiful things about what's happening right now, because we have to find the learning opportunities, of course, and the blessings, is that this is going to really hopefully create a stronger partnership between parents and educators. And we're realizing, or maybe valuing a little bit more overall as a field, how much parents can contribute to the education experience and their important role. Taylor, what until now is your experience with homeschooling?
So I have a unique experience because I've worked at 3 school districts, and I've also worked at 2 universities. And so with one of those universities, I was a coordinator for academic support, and that, entailed all the online learning and all those things that went along with that. And, being a tech director at my former school and now assistant director at this school, a lot of that has gone into it. Even at my current school, we have online students who we call them homebound students. They have chosen for one reason or another to do school at home, and we support that, and we give them devices to be able to do their schoolwork if they need it. If not, they can choose to do their own. So I do have a little bit different experience with that and with supporting that. And just I've also been a system administrator for 2 different learning management systems for online schooling and things that go with that. So I have a literal different experience as far as delivery, but at the same time, as I'm sure anyone that truly homeschools their child, it's completely different than a school environment. It's just completely different the way you do it and the way you deliver it. And they know more than me the in and outs of the day-to-day things. I know more of how the system should operate and how we can support the children and support the students, but they are the ones that are there with them every day and know a lot of those things that can help. And for me, it's always been about give me the feedback that we need to help you with what we're doing. What do we need to change, and what do we need to do to make it better for you?
It's interesting because as you speak, Taylor, I'm thinking about the word delivery, because all of a sudden delivery became a logistical, I don't even know the word, nightmare, because we basically, as a country, had to roll out homeschooling in like 2 weeks or 3 weeks across the board. So delivery is obviously a critical piece, but it's interesting how it is a partnership between learning how to deliver those platforms and then also the delivery in home, or in terms of the instruction strategies that would be very different. So I see where it's a big partnership between the 2 sides. Lori, what has your experience with homeschooling been up until now?
So, as I said, I have 3 boys, and I homeschooled them from the time they were in preschool up till my oldest finished 7th grade. Um, my oldest is autistic, and my second oldest is ADHD. And so it was quite challenging homeschooling those 3 boys. But homeschooling gave me a lot of flexibility, I guess is the best word, in giving them each what they needed in our home environment, and preparing them, I think, in the best way I could for when they were ready to go into public schools. I think the best way of putting it. We went into schooling eventually only because my health deteriorated rapidly at the time, and so it was out of necessity. But it ended up being a great thing for all 3 of them in the long run, and they are now incredibly socially active in their public school environments. But homeschooling was a great challenge and a great reward in what we did do when we were at home.
That's interesting how you were able to be basically more responsive to your children's unique needs. And that's something that we really want to explore in this conversation about homeschooling, is that for kids with special needs, but really kids in general, is this an opportunity right now while we're all temporarily homeschooling to allow our children to explore some of their own interests and have a little bit more choice and flexibility and meet their needs a
Yeah,
little more individually also.
absolutely. I think really parents should take this opportunity um, to let their kids explore, as you said, their own interests and their passions, and um, see what they really, really love, and do some learning on things that they wouldn't necessarily get a chance to really explore deeply when in their regular school environments.
That's a great opportunity. Thank you. And Jen, what has your experience been with homeschooling until now?
So I don't have quite as much experience, but I had to pull my son out of his previous school. He just wasn't getting his needs met. He was actually suicidal for several years, and he was just continuing to go downhill, and he was getting further behind. He has a host of learning disabilities, ADHD, and anxiety disorder, and at some point we just had to make the decision to, place him elsewhere, but we didn't have a place secured quite yet. We were in the middle of fifth grade, but his situation was serious, and the psychiatrist really wanted us to just, get him out, and she recommended homeschooling. And we used that as a stopgap until he got his placement at Hope Creek Academy. And it's actually worked out fairly well. In fact, so well that the director of Hope Creek actually has suggested to other parents whose children were having difficulty transitioning from the previous school to Hope Creek to actually do homeschooling as a way of transitioning. And for us, it was an emergency measure. and so I literally one day withdrew, and the next day started homeschooling with really not much other than, some things that the teachers at the previous school had handed me, to help me out. But I think, at first I didn't think I could do it. I was like, what am I going to do? And it quickly became apparent to me that this is not, you don't have to have like a big lesson plan. You don't have to have, everything all planned out down to the T. You can really see this as a journey, a path that you can take at whatever pace you need to, take whatever kind of path you need to. There's no one way to do it. And we soon, I think within about a week, kind of settled into a nice rhythm. I chose to do a collaborative approach, which allowed my son to take some ownership and some control which helped him reduce his anxiety over schoolwork. And it really got him invested in his own education. So, and it opened up the lines of communication because he was having a difficult time. Part of his plethora of special needs is in difficulty with articulating and communicating his emotions and needs. And so actually being able to homeschool opened up the lines of communication, finally gave him that environment he needed where he had the time and, the pressure taken off, where he could take his time to articulate and communicate how he was feeling. And we were able to get down to a lot of the root causes of where his struggles were, where his strengths were that we could leverage. And, so it was such a process of discovery for us. And we were able to take all that we discovered. And then when he transitioned to the private school, able to share that with them, and they were able to leverage all that we had discovered. So it really was a very, it started out as an experience that was in an emergency fashion, but it ended up such a positive experience.
I'm glad that worked out for you. And it's interesting because when you're talking about it starting out as an emergency, that's sort of how I think a lot of parents are feeling right now for different reasons, obviously, external reasons, not reasons related to their child necessarily. However, it sounds like you built a really strong working relationship and collaborative relationship, like you said, with your son. So hopefully that this is an opportunity for families to come out stronger at the end of it.
Yeah, I think so. I think my only advice would be to families is, utilize this as a time to do that, to get to know, if you've had a kid in a traditional school system, a lot of us don't really know what goes on in their day to day, and this is a chance for us to get to know them as a student, as well, and sort of get into their heads and their hearts as to what their experience of schooling, of learning is. And it really can create, I think, a lot of a deeper knowledge in a parent, on how to talk to their teachers, whoever their teachers may next be, if they do go back to a traditional afterwards.
I think those are all excellent points. Um, and it is interesting how everybody has a slightly different experience with homeschooling up until this point. Um, One of the things I'd like to jump into next is delving into some of the challenges that any of you have either faced in your past experiences, or for those of us who are parents and newly homeschooling now, what challenges are you facing currently? So let's see. How about Taylor? Can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you're facing?
Yeah. So for me, I have kids spaced out all over the place, right? So I have one that's about to be 19, and then I have twins that are 5, and then I have a 3-year-old. So teaching and learning is a little bit different for us, but it also allows me to focus on many areas. And for me, I think it's harder for me to teach the little ones than it is the big one, because the big one can kind of take ownership of a lot of her stuff, where my little ones are just like, I'm bored, I don't want to, and it's, for me, it's so hard. And I'm like, I am so glad I work at the district office now. Sometimes this is just really hard, and it makes me really appreciate our teachers and our parents and all that they do with this. But at the same time, I also get to see it from the other side, and I say, okay, for me, like this last week in my district, we spent a couple of days handing out devices and handing out home Wi-Fi so people could have access to do e-learning if they didn't have access. And so that was something that was very special to me, that we give them the access and they can still connect with their teachers and do things that they need to. But I've also been in those Title I districts where we didn't have money for anything, right? And you wanted to do these great things and you couldn't. So my biggest issue with it is just sometimes you've been doing this district level so long that you forget some of those little things that you always did that were just easy. And you want to do, well, I can do in-depth this, and this, and it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be all that stuff. And I have to stop myself and go, just connect with your kids. Just talk to them and let them see the joy in it, and they will help teach themselves once they're enjoying it. And that's my thing, because each one of our kids is different. Just like I cannot teach the same lesson to each one of my kids, because one of them might get it and the other two will be like, I don't care. And then my oldest will be like, I don't even know why I'm in here, right? So for me, it's about individualizing it for each one of them and helping them, but also making multiple pathways for them. And that's my challenge with homeschooling, is how do I make those multiple pathways, and how do I keep consistent with who they are and not just focus on what I do.
Those are great points. And I love how you brought out the technology, but also really talked about making the connection with your kids and building those pathways. So, Kris, can you tell us a little bit more about your experience from the district level and otherwise?
Yeah, absolutely. I really think that, again, as everybody's talking about the positives that can come out of this, and I'd like to think of myself as an optimist as well. I think it gives us the opportunity as building level educators and people that are delivering instruction in schools to reevaluate our curriculum and what it is that we're trying to teach kids, and break it down into what are really the essential goals and objectives of our courses. And, how do we give students the opportunity to understand those key goals and objectives, and to play with them and to work with them, and then have different opportunities to be able to demonstrate competency in those areas. because too often in school, for us, it's we have to cover everything. We have to check every box. We have to have our compliance and our grades and and all of our answers exactly when we say we need it in schools. And kids that maybe work a little differently or access information a little differently can feel that they're being unsuccessful when actually, in the long run, they may be better off for it. And I think that this whole approach can be a positive for all of us in seeing that and saying, yeah, what is it that a second grader needs to understand in math, or a 10th grader needs to understand in social studies, and what are the basics of that, and how can we work with that and provide them ways to access that information, to work with that information, to demonstrate competency information, and then move on and explore some of the areas that they're passionate about. So again, a definitely difficult situation that I think can make us better as an education system in the long run, if we kind of look at it from a global and a broader perspective.
Absolutely. I think that you bring out something amazing when you talk about how we really have to take a very critical look at the curriculum and what is really important, and kind of pare away some of the things that that maybe aren't going to make as big of a difference in the long run. So that's a fascinating way to think about it. How
Absolutely.
about
Sorry,
Mhm. Go
didn't mean
ahead.
to catch you up there, but absolutely, even the grading piece of it all, we're so
Mhm.
obsessed with grades and scores and check marks and points, and maybe we can get back to a little bit more of authentic learning and a little bit more about tapping into student strengths and their passions and really authentic learning and use of that knowledge.
Well, necessity really forces us to take those long, hard looks. H- How about you, Lori? What do you see as the challenges that you faced when you were homeschooling back in the day, and maybe trying to manage your kids now that are back at home again?
Well, I just want to say I love what you guys are saying about this authentic learning, because really that's why so many people that are homeschooling from the point of wanting to homeschool, that's one of the big reasons why they do. Um, and I want to just address, um, I would say, a challenge of homeschooling right now with the current climate with my three um, high schoolers, and that's acknowledging the fact that they're grieving, that these kids are grieving, and so I have a especially my junior and my senior, um, before the schools even closed, they were saying, if school closes, we're probably not going to go back to school, mom, by before the end of the year. And after school closed, I had a lot of tears in my house. And so when we're working with these kids at home with school, we have to we have to give them grace and give ourselves grace in acknowledging that they're grieving the loss of things like proms and maybe even graduation ceremonies and things like that, and or just even thinking about that potential. And um, And so, and then we as parents are also grieving losses. And so we have to give each other grace in in these moments of, instead of just pounding in, like you're saying, lessons, 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 um, making sure we're allowing time for fun and allowing lots of time for socializing with their friends. And so just last night, my three were gaming online with their friends, and just laughing hysterically. I could hear them through the walls, just rousing and laughing, and it made my heart happy because when they're at school with they get so much social time, and so um, I just want to challenge everybody to make sure that you're uh, to not just focus on school, 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 make sure you're getting all this work done, but we also need to be caring for their hearts during this time. So that's what I'm focusing on as the parent teacher right now.
That's That is so important, and I don't think that point can be, made strongly enough. I we just started doing trying to practice some Zoom meetings with my school, and just having that connection has been amazing. The kids' faces just light up when they can see their classmates over the
Mhm.
computer screen, and just I think you hit the nail on the head when you said they are grieving, and it's
Yes.
not just the kids that are grieving, it's the parents that are grieving.
Yes.
And I can tell you, I have a building full of teachers who are
Yes.
also grieving,
Absolutely.
because life is not the same as it was just a couple weeks ago.
Mhm.
And I think that point is very well made. Now, for Jen, when you had to make that transition, and now also you're doing this again at home, what kinds of challenges are you finding?
When I was first making the transition, I think the greatest challenge was just finding confidence in myself to do it. I think a lot of people who are getting into homeschooling, um, whether or not they're choosing to do it, or they have to do it as an emergency, or sudden, there's a suddenness to it. We all have that, imposter syndrome, right? We all feel like, I can't do this. I'm not good enough or whatever. I think everybody has at least a few moments of those feelings. Um, and I would just say, anyone who's listening to that and feeling that same sense in their situation, um, just take a deep breath and just say to yourself, this is fine. I've got this. There is no rule. There's no one way to do this. And, and this is all dependent too on your specific situation. If you're getting guidance from your schools, I've got two different school situations. I've got the youngest in a private special needs school, but the oldest is in public high school. The youngest is 12 going on 13. The oldest is 16 going on 17. Um, and for them, with the Hope Creek, they prepared a few weeks ahead of time. They had packets ready to go. We came and picked up our packets. They've just been so well organized. It's been so easy to follow the script that they set up. And I'm just there to guide, to tutor, to help my son if he has any emotional moments, where he thinks he can't do something that's part of his anxiety disorder. I'm really more there just to be his emotional support than anything else. And then just to make sure he stays on track with the ADHD and help him out with a math problem here and there. I actually have a degree in mathematics and another in computer science. I'm a freelance software engineer, so I have my own business, but I do that part time. And I just find that it was just finding that confidence in yourself, and just don't worry. You don't have a plan. You don't have it all worked out. I would even say that for teachers too. It's like we're all in this together, and I think we can just all find our paths together, and we don't necessarily have to have like a big master plan for this. I think we all have our kids' best interests in heart, and I think we can just find our way through this. Um, that's that was my experience for the fifth grade. I guess I talked a little bit about the Hope Creek, and that's going pretty well. They're a smaller school, and so of course we get a little more attention from each individual teacher. For the public school, they've got a lot more kids, per capita. But my older son is at the point now where he is fairly independent. He's only a year and a few months away from going to college, and he pretty much already takes care of most of his education on his own. His school's fairly good about access to technology. They've given the kids Chromebooks and things like that this year. So I think for me, I'm not going to really have to worry about the older son. I think he's pretty much going to be able to take care of it himself. I'll just be here to check on him once in a while and see how he's doing. But I think I would probably reiterate what Lori said. It's the emotional part of this, that I think all of us who are involved with these kids, family, friends, teachers, is to make sure that they continue to have the emotional and social nurturing that they need.
Thank you for highlighting that. And I also really appreciate you sharing your experience, Jen, and the success that you had with your partnership with Hope Creek Academy. I think that all of us right now can learn a lot from that. And I say that as a parent and as a teacher, because what I hear when you talk about your experience when working with the school is that they were very flexible in their role, and it allowed the space for you to be able to feel supported, whether it was as a homeschooling mother in the beginning or then as a mother with the student, your son, in the school, and then now again homeschooling. And I think that that's something that as educators, we really have to listen to and to open up the space for that sort of partnership, because everything has changed and we really more than ever have to work together. I'd like to move into the next question and ask you all if you've learned any valuable lessons from this experience. And I'd like to start with Kris. From your experience as an administrator, I know that you mentioned that you did work with homeschooling parents initially, but now I guess everybody's a homeschooling parent. So, are there any valuable lessons that you've learned so far in this experience?
Yeah, I think probably the best advice that anybody has given me through all of this is to keep it simple and don't expect perfection, and worry about teaching our kids what it means to be a good person. And first and foremost, before anything, what it means to be a good citizen, a good family member, because these are trying times, and we want our kids to be well mentally, and we want them to be well physically, and we want them to be good people. And the education is certainly important, and we want them to continue to use their minds and to challenge themselves intellectually. But before they can do that, they need to be okay mentally, and they need to be in that right mindset first. And I think that is first and foremost what we need to focus on. And then as we start to transition into really delivering that important content and teaching those important skills, keep it simple. We need to know that it's not going to be perfect initially. There's going to be growing pains. But if we keep the hearts and minds of our kids at the forefront, then we'll be in a good spot.
I think that is excellent advice, Kris. Thank you. And I think that people need to have that guidance right now from people in education and that assurance. I'd also like to mention that Kris Felicello wrote a great book with Gary Armida called The Teacher and the Admin, and they have a website where there's a lot of insight that maybe seemed relevant directly to educators before, but now that we're all in the education business, at least temporarily, you guys might want to check out. Taylor, what valuable lessons have you learned from this experience so far?
Well, and I'll echo some of what Kris said. For me, a lot of parents will contact me looking for logins for this, or should my student be doing this, or whatever it is, and you don't need to worry about those things. This thing, this time, one, it's unprecedented. It's something we haven't dealt with before, and two, your kid doesn't need to be preparing for the ACT right now. They don't need to be getting ready for a college entry exam, anything like that. Like, what your kid needs right now is just to, one, connect with you, and two, you can teach them a little bit along the way. Like, for instance, the other day, my kids and I had a picnic outside, and one of the ways we taught was, because they're young and they're still learning things, we were counting the grapes as we were eating them. We were, doing different things like that allowed us to learn things, but still had fun. And, then after that, we went and read our book about Sonic. And then after we're done with Sonic, we're going to watch the movie. Things like that, they're fun and they allow the kid to learn, but they don't overwhelm them that you have to do school all day, every day. Your house is not a school building. Don't overdo it. It's, this is unique waters that we're in. And I'm not saying you can't learn at the same rate, but it doesn't need to be a college campus. It doesn't need to be, we're doing this all the time. You've got to, they've got to be comfortable. They've got to be taken care of. They've got to be connected with. And then after that, we can throw the learning in on it. And that goes whether on campus or off. The connection and the comfort is what sets up everything else. Let's not overdo it. Let's start small, and then we can build from there. And from that, from laying that foundation, then we can start building the house.
I think that's
very true.
Mm-hmm. And it's very reassuring, I think, for a lot of parents to realize that they don't have to have this major pressure yes, we want kids to learn. We want them to advance with the standards and the curriculum and not to lose time. But we are in very uncomfortable times right now. And that family time is really important. Lori, what would you say are the valuable lessons that you've learned from this experience or from your prior experience with homeschooling as well?
Well, as Taylor said, schooling at home doesn't have to look like school at school, and that's really the beautiful thing about it is you can learn from everything that you do at home, like, you know, learning how to do dishes and learning how to do laundry and working in the garden and just doing life together is learning. And and that's really, the really beautiful thing about school at home, homeschooling. It's life, and it's learning about, as Kris said, character building and just being a human being, and it's beautiful. And that's one of the reasons that we started homeschooling. But I also want to say that, as we were saying before, that um, you have to be forgiving of yourself and your kids, and allow that learning curve. And everybody's jumping in right in the middle, or cold. um, but even the most seasoned homeschooler, um, they start a new year every year fresh, learning in a brand new subject in a new grade. It's not like they're a teacher that teaches the same subject over and over and over again, and they've got now a set curriculum. Even the seasoned homeschoolers got to learn, they've got to learn a new subject every year and a new grade level every year. And so we as homeschoolers um, are nervous Nellies, I guess you'd say, all the time, because you're constantly learning new things. And so um, even like I said, the most seasoned homeschooler has to give themselves grace and be forgiving and of them to themselves, and not take it too seriously, and learn as you go, and just have fun with it yourself. So all to all the parents out there that are, have fun with it. Give yourself grace, be forgiving of yourselves, and learn with your kids. And that's the beautiful thing. Homeschooling is about loving to learn,
Mm-hmm. For
That
sure.
loving to learn. And
that
so
is
if you
really
instill a love of learning to your kids, you know, um, that really, if your kids can learn to love to learn,
And observe. There's
then
so much out there that kids can observe right in their own neighborhoods, in their own homes, in their own backyards, that sometimes we're just going so fast that we don't have time to do. I mean, there's so much learning that can be done right there just by opening their
absolutely.
eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Look at a
well.
mushroom in the lawn.
That's a really beautiful take on this because it makes it feel more like an opportunity and less like something that parents have to do that they don't necessarily feel confident about doing.
Yeah,
Jen,
you
what
learn with
advice?
your kids. Just learn with them.
Exactly, exactly. And we all need to always keep learning, so that's perfect. Jen, what valuable lessons have you learned from this experience?
Since it'd been a couple years since I had homeschooled my son, um, and he's made so much growth at Hope Creek since then. I had forgotten how much I enjoyed being at home with him and doing this with him. It was more difficult at that time 2 years ago because of that emergency situation. In the 2 years since he's been at Hope Creek, it's a wonderful school, excellent education. They also have a very therapeutic atmosphere. So they have like the therapy dogs that come in. It's a volunteer organization, comes in once a week, and they can read to the dogs, talk to the dogs, because all the kids, no matter what disability the kids have at Hope Creek, all of them have an anxiety disorder, which is very commonly comorbid with learning disabilities or neuroatypicality or disabilities in general. Um, and just seeing the difference between then and now, how much more comfortable he is being a student. His confidence in himself. I'm learning that, now I can really enjoy so thoroughly being his parent teacher at home. And also the ability here, partway through his Hope Creek journey, that I'm able now at home to help him over whatever little humps he has right now. For example, with the writing, he actually makes it too complicated on himself. He gets kind of writer's block when, once he gets the confidence in himself, he can do a great job with his writing assignments. So right now, I'm really enjoying the role of being able to help him find his confidence in himself as a writer. So it's again, that bonding opportunity like we had a couple of years ago. I'm getting a chance at having another one of those wonderful bonding opportunities, and that's just been thoroughly enjoyable for me.
I love the fact that bonding has really come to the forefront for you, and I think for many others in this whole experience. One valuable lesson that I have taken away from all of this is flexibility, because not only do we need to be flexible and show grace to our own children and ourselves, but as an educator, recognizing the fact that this is brand new for parents. And we have a lot of parents in our area where it's a double income household. Everybody's working full time. And so trying to get their work done at home while also help their small children get things done at home can be a really big challenge. And so making sure that our expectations as educators are flexible so that we can offer different options for them as to when to complete assignments and how to complete assignments, I think that's really key. Mm-hmm. So we're going to shift gears and go into our final question. And I would like for everybody to think about, if you could pick that number one top thing that you would like to see change in education moving forward based on the experiences that we're going through right now, what would we do? Just pick one thing. Kris, what would you pick?
Well, I've been pretty passionate about homework and the role it's played in education for a long time, as has Gary, who wrote the book with me, and really, I think this will give people a different perspective on what homework, or home learning, as we like to call it in North Rockland, could look like. It really should be about what are your key goals and objectives of your course, and what are things that I can offer students that they could do on their own independently at home to support what those goals and objectives are. And it's not about a check. It's not about compliance. It's not about doing it because I said so. It's about the learning, and it's about gaining those core competencies, those core skills. So, I'm optimistic that this may help move the needle a bit in that direction when things finally do get back to a little bit of a sense of normalcy.
Wonderful. And we'll make sure to include a link to your book in the show notes for this podcast so that people who are interested can find it. Taylor, tell me your one thing that you hope to see change in education.
So this is always a struggle of mine because I guess being a tech guy, I always have so much I want to change. But I think for me, the biggest thing in education that I want to change is tradition. So many times we rely on what we've done before instead of what we can do now. And that's part of the problem we're having now, is that so many people are not prepared for what's going on because we've just done the same old things. Instead of, we've had this technology for how many years, and we could have been building to this over the years, and we've used as many excuses as we could not to. So for me, it's the tradition of it, of, well, we do this in the classroom with this book and this thing, when every book is online, our kids use these applications every day. We have things that sync them all together and make our lives easier. We just don't take that next step. So for me, it's killing the tradition and taking that role of saying it's okay to be one-to-one. It's okay to start building towards that, because if they continue this stuff at home, that only builds on top of what we're already doing. It doesn't take away from it. It builds on top of it, and it makes what we're doing stronger. And that's the thing I would take away.
Very interesting point. How about you, Lori?
Yes, I think building on what's happening right now and adding in the flexibility, as Taylor was saying, there's so many different styles of learning with the kids that kids have, and seeing that with my three children that I homeschooled, no two kids learn the same way, and so being able to add in more flexibility into what is happening in the classroom. I think this is going to open up that door to see the different possibilities. And so that's what I would like to see happen.
Very good. Very good. And Jen, I know we're starting to get short on time, but what's the one thing that you would like to see change in education going forward?
So I'm going to build on a couple previous answers and maybe take the more controversial view. But I would actually like a very fundamental change in the way we look at homework. Hope Creek actually has no homework, and it has been one of the greatest blessings of moving to Hope Creek. The philosophy, I think they start doing it in high school. I think they just have no homework until high school. But one of the things a psychiatrist, my youngest son's psychiatrist, had mentioned was that there's actually no evidence that homework actually makes a difference, not in the grand or large or meta scale. On individual things, maybe someone needs a little extra practice on something that they struggle with. But in terms of kids with disabilities, especially since almost always they have an anxiety disorder, they're often exhausted by the end of the day. They've spent all that brain energy, which translates to a physical energy. And, approaching that homework at night can be such a huge, soul-crushing source of additional anxiety. Taking that away, being able to, for my son to come home, for us to have quality family time, for him to be able to pursue things like taekwondo and other things. As we know, physical activity actually greatly improves a lot of these issues with ADHD and attention and focus, and also anxiety, feeling more calm and contented, and just general health. It's opened my eyes to, I think we really need to rethink the way we do homework. And I think we really need to pull back a lot on it, especially since you hear a lot in the news reports how homework seems to be piling up more rather than pulling back. And so I think that's what I would ask, parents and educators both, is let's really rethink the homework thing.
Amen.
Thank you. And I think that, yeah, I also personally agree. But I think that also as we move towards a new model where teachers have been involved with parents a little bit more, and parents have gotten more involved with the curriculum, hopefully we can have better dialogue towards that end. I want to thank you all for pulling up a seat and being part of our show today. I really, really, again, want to thank the people that were on our panel. Thank you, Kris, Taylor, Lori, and Jen. I appreciate your taking the time during such difficult times that we're all experiencing. I
You're welcome.
apologize to anyone that's
Thank you.
listening if our internet were not the sound was not as perfect as we would have liked. Thank you, guys. And please reach out to us on Twitter or Instagram at the EduTable. We would love to hear from you. The more voices in this conversation, the more diverse it will be. And also remember to check out the articles and videos on our website at theedutable.com and subscribe so that we can deliver all of this original content right to your inbox. Thank you.
We're so glad you pulled up a seat, and we'll talk to you next time.